How did they attach a depth charge to an aircraft?
Well, under the belly, we had where you could attach the belly tank or a bomb. Mm-hmm. It was either a bomb rack or a belly tank rack. You couldn't carry it both. You carried one or the other. Mm-hmm. And we did a lot of bombing, 500 pounds, and 100-pound depth charges. You only have one.
I've never heard of that before.
But that was quite effective. The Coast Watchers would tell us, you know, in the islands they had these New Zealand and Australian people that had worked on the coconut plantations, and they just went back into the bush.
Radios.
And like on one day there was raid in April of '43. We got word that about 100 and something Japanese planes had taken off and were headed down to Guadalcanal, and we heard this a couple of hours before we could have gotten there. We got all our planes up in the air. I think we had 90 airplanes. That included the Air Corps, the Marines, the Navy, and the Australians. We had 90 fighters got in the air that day, and there were over 100 Japanese planes. We heard from the Coast Watchers that only about 15 or 20 of the Japanese planes got back. Real turkey shoot that day. The Coast Watchers were very, very helpful. Well informed.
Did you get pretty close to did you stay pretty close to the 12 that you went with originally, or were you kind of scattered?
Well, right in the beginning we stayed together, and then all of a sudden we all, with this rotation system, and it just got split up. And then we had some boys to join us right after we got there that had been in Hawaii. They were a class ahead of us in flying school, but they came down and joined us. And there were about 10 of them, and we all, the 20 some odd of us, pretty much stayed together with that group.
So you got to know each other pretty well.
Quite well, yeah. And there's one of the fellows that I still am in contact with and see and correspond with time to time.
And I'll make their picture and they start doing these things, and they tell each other to fly low and slow when they leave.
But we made some good friends. And when I came back home from Pacific in March of 1944. The last mission I flew, I escorted a Navy PBY. They always sent a Navy PBY behind the bombers who would go out, and they had gone to bomb the ball. And we were flying off of Bougainville. I escorted a PBY out to be on standby in case some of these bombers had to land the war. And fortunately, nobody did that day. Although I think all our planes got back safely.
Were your living conditions on Guadalcanal and Bougainville, were they tents or Quonset huts? Or
Mostly Quonset huts.
Quonset huts.
Bougainville was tents. All the others had been Quonset huts up to then.
Which was preferable, Quonset hut or
Quonset
tent?
hut. When we were flying off of a base on New Georgia, and they had just taken a very small perimeter on Bougainville. They never did take the complete island. It's a large, this is the largest of the Solomon Islands. It's probably 150 miles long, 75 miles wide. So it's a pretty good sized island. And they never took the whole thing. They went about halfway up Princess Augusta and Bay, and took a beachhead there and built an air base. And it was a car base. That made a good landing strip, Carl did. They made it out of Carl, and so they had not quite completed it. And they sent a hospital plane up, and it was going to land on that strip and pick up some wounded and bring back. And they sent 4 of us along to escort it. And when we got up there, we weren't supposed to land. We hadn't been given permission to land, but we decided that after we got there, hey, there's no need of us burning all this gas up here. Let's us go down and land and wait, which we did. And we pulled off the side of the runway and parked there and was all sitting on the wing of the plane waiting to see when this other plane was going to leave. And a bunch of Marines came up out of the bush, standing around looking, you know. I heard one of these young Marines, he couldn't have been more than 18 years old, standing there with his buddy, and he's looking at this airplane, you know. Gosh, said, don't you know it takes guts to fly that plane? And I thought, man, you don't know what you're talking about. You're going to get back out there in the bush with the Japs in a few minutes. I'm going to get an airplane, go back down here, and I'm going to sleep in a bed where it got sheets on it, and eat a hot meal tonight. And you talk about it taking guts. I wish my place was you, man. But
yeah, he was right.
Your own perspective. But the only thing we had to worry about was the air raids, which
usually came in at night, did they? Or?
They came in at night, and we had. I remember one night down on Guadalcanal. We had just gotten our first night fighter, which was a P-61. It looked like a P-38, larger, and it had some radar equipment in it, which was brand new at that time.
Is that the one they called the Black Widow?
Yeah. And so we had just gotten one. It was up. Some bombers were coming, and so they sent the night fighter up. I guess it was the first time we sent one up. And we were all sitting there listening to the radio. And this voice comes on the radio, and he says, my name is some Japanese name. He said, I grew up in Brooklyn, went to Brooklyn College. He said, I'm over here fighting for what I think's right. So I'm better get in Knoxville, but I'm getting ready to drop it. You know, they talk about putting the Japanese in the camp. Roosevelt had no other choice. Unless you understand and know Japanese people and their thinking. They are Japanese first. They may be American citizens, but they're Japanese citizens first. Then they're American citizens. And at that time, there was no way to pick out those that we could trust and those we couldn't trust. Now, some of the Japanese soldiers that went to Europe and fought did a tremendous job.
442nd Regimental Combat.
They were fantastic soldiers, no doubt about that. But people today criticize Mr. Roosevelt and also Harry Truman for what he did, and I don't criticize either one of them. And I've never been a big fan of either one of them politically. But they made the right decisions on both in the war.
You got down to New Zealand fairly often?
Yes, I got there, let's see, I was there in a hospital, then I went back 3 more times after that.
What was your sense of that place and the people there?
The people in New Zealand were quite friendly to us. The men, most of the young men had been sent to North Africa. And so they had very few young men there. Most of the men that you saw were 50 and up, maybe not that old, but they were older, too old for the service. Very few people there, men that were service age. And of course we came in and we took over all the girls.
Of course.
Naturally. And one day, a friend of mine and I had just gotten there, and the first thing you would always do is go rent a car. And So we had not been able to get one from an auto rental. They were all gone. And we happened to stop at a Ford dealer's that we saw. We went in and asked him if he'd rent us one. And he said, "Can't rent you one, but I'll tell you what I'll do." He said, "I'll sell you one. If you give me a down payment of so many pounds," which is what it would cost you to rent a car for the time we were going to do that. He said, "When you get ready to go back," he said, I'll buy the car back from you for what you owe me over and above this. So we did that. We bought that car. And we went down to get some gas ration tickets. And I was driving, and he got out and ran up into the rationing office to get us some gas tickets. And I was just circling the block right across the street from where we ate dinner that night. And he got through and he came down and he was standing there on the sidewalk, and this elderly man, I think he had a few drinks, came up and said, "Hey buddy, give me a cigarette." No, "Hey Yank, give me a cigarette." And this guy didn't smoke. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't have one, I don't smoke." He said, "Oh, the hell all you Yanks smoke. Give me a cigarette." And "I'm sorry, I don't have a cigarette, I don't smoke." And he just cussed him. I said, "You come down here, you drink up all our whiskey, you take all our women away from you, won't even give me a cigarette." But they all in all, they were very good to us, and the food was out of this world good. We would stay at a Red Cross operated hostelry, I guess you'd call it, and they had their meals, and they had a big kitchen with a large refrigerator, and we would eat 3 meals a day. It would be steak and eggs. 3 times a day, and then at night when you'd come in, why, you could go back in that kitchen and find yourself another steak and cook it before you went to bed. So we ate steak about 4 times a day the whole time we were there. And the fruit, the strawberries, the grapes, all the fruit was just very good.
How about the food on Guadalcanal?
Well, if you like spam, why, if you like it fried, okay. If you like it barbecued, okay. You got spam. And we got powdered eggs, which I never did get. I never could eat them. And then the butter was a high melting point butter. We called it cosmoline. You know what they did with the cosmoline is the grease you still put on guns before you put them away. And it'd stick to the roof of your mouth.
Well, I guess that's
It was awful. But anyway, then we'd have some canned drink, that was powdered drink, that wasn't any good. Always lemon juice.
Did you have much opportunity, or did they send you on missions where you attacked Japanese shipping, seaborne?
Yes, that morning I told you about going up on the Kennedy. That's what that was. We were after the Japanese Navy that had been in that battle that night. Some of them were crippled, and the dive bombers went after them to finish them off.
Did they find them?
Yeah. Yeah, they finished off, I think, 2 of them that I saw that they get finished off. One destroyer and one was a cruiser. The first one, I believe, was a cruiser. And the second one, they beached it. The Japs beached it. It didn't go down. And then they got a destroyer that afternoon. Finished them off.
They sent you home in March of '44?
March of '44.
You had enough mission. How did they calculate who stayed and who went?
About mostly the time over there, I had flown, I believe I had 72 missions, which a lot of missions compared to what they flew in the European theater. 25.
Different kind of missions, though.
Yeah. I was just getting ready to say, I would much rather have flown 72 missions where I flew than the 25 where they flew. Because the Germans had the best anti-aircraft of any of us. I mean, we didn't have as good as the Germans.
Right. Did you have a lot of problem with Japanese anti-aircraft weapons?
With their weaponry? No, it wasn't all that good. They had the little 6mm machine gun, you know, and you could take quite a bit of that fire before it would shoot one off on the side. I did get bullet holes, but nothing. Constant.
Was the P-39 armored? And,
Yeah, we were quite, and having the engine behind us, that was a big help too.
Yeah.
I guess you could say that because you don't get many head-on. But it was well armored. I believe the statistics said that P-39 could probably take about a full minute of fire from a Japanese plane if you could fire him for a full minute. Hit him. If we could weather that, whereas a Japanese plane could take about 15 seconds to fire.
Yeah, they were quick and maneuverable, but not very well armored.
They were not armored at all. They were maneuverable. Gee whiz. They'd like to get off in a distance and do acrobatics out there.
Showing up.
Showing that.
Showing off a little.
Now they could do a loop and then come over and do another. Now I had the good fortune of getting to fly one of the jets right at the end of the war. It was the Bell jet, that first one that was built, was the XP-59.
Right.
I got to fly it a couple of times. And you could just about do that with that jet.
Which that's quite.
That was the most fun that you could have flying something like that. I mean, I just couldn't believe you could do all you could do. When I came back to the States, I was sent to Orlando, Florida, half-tack, and we were assigned duties of trying out new equipment, go around, put on air shows, not the kind that they put on this day and time with the Blue Angel. We didn't do that type of big dive bomb, we stray, drop napalm, we do aerial gunnery, aerial combat, and dogfight, and this kind of stuff for special places where they had people they want to show out to. And we got what I was going to tell you now.
Talk about the jet plane. And
Oh yeah, the jet. We had 2 fighter squadrons and 1 light bomber squadron assigned to do this work down in Orlando, Florida. Well, we were originally in Orlando, then we went to Kissimmee. But the other fighter squadron, in our squadron, we had P-51s, P-38s, P-63s, A-34s, 1 Black Widow. That was about what we, and 1 P-47. The other fighter squadron had nothing but P-47. And the light bomber squadron was A-26. We finally changed that to B-26, but at that time it was called the A-26. And the P-47 squadron got 2 of those jets. And they were flying those, trying them out. And one day the squadron CO from over on that side of the field sent word over to us that if any of us wanted to check out in that jet, why, come on over there. They didn't have any assignments for us to do. So several of us went over there and checked out and flew it. And you only have a 35-minute range because of the gas consumption. So went up and flew it, and it was just fantastic. You could do slow rolls going straight up, and you could do loops and anything, all kinds of maneuvers, and it was fun. And I came back and landed, and it was right before lunch, so I went straight on to the mess hall and eat lunch. And the squadron CO from that squadron came over and sat down by me and said, "Well, did you enjoy that flight in the jet?" And I said, "Boy, you better believe it." He said, "You want to fly it some more?" I said, "Anytime you let me. I love to fly." He said, well, hurry up and finish lunch. I said, I got something I want you to do for me. He said, we got a boy here that's, and I usually call his name, and he'd been to Europe in P-47 and had shot down, I think he had 7 Germans to his grave. Good pilot. He said, we want you to get in this jet. I'm going to put him in P-47 and we want you to have a little dogfight right over the field here for some of the brass we got coming in. So went up there and we got together and we decided how we were going to do this. And he was going to be coming from the west to the east, now it's coming from the east to the west. And we were going to meet at 8,000 feet, I believe, right over the field. So we are up there and making our runs, and I'm talking to him, and I'm doing what I told him I was going to do. I was coming at the altitude, you know. I'm looking, I can't find him. He's not to be seen. And I just happened to look up, and so he was cheating on me. They evidently had planned it that way.
Oh.
And he was up there about 2,000 feet above me, coming down on me from up here. Well, I saw him in time to turn into him. And I turned into him, and we passed head on. And I came back and I got on his tail. You know, just like that. It wasn't anything. I mean, I didn't even have to work up a sweat to pull this plane around and get it on. And he did every trick that any of us ever learned. And this jet, with just very little effort, I can just say right there, the whole way. He couldn't shake me off his tail anyway. And it was amazing. Now, if the Germans had followed through with their jets, they could have really torn up our Air Force. They could have done much more damage than they did. Because the jet and the prop, I mean, there's no comparison. No way that you can compete with each other.
Were you ever tempted to stay in and continue to fly?
Yes, I was. As a matter of fact, in Orlando.
Well, maybe you did. I don't know.
No, I didn't. In Orlando, toward the end of the war, they called us together one afternoon and talked with us and said, we've got more pilots than we need, and we're starting a program of letting people out on a point system. And you get so many points for each month you're in the service, so many points for overseas, so many points for decorations and so on. And so it says we are going to start discharging on this point system, people that want out. But if any of you would like to stay in and get regular commissions, said we have plenty of places for regular commissions. We were all reserved at that time.
Were you a lieutenant then, captain?
Lieutenant. And so at that time, see, I hadn't finished Tech. I had another year and a half to go at Tech. I thought a year and a half. And I was 25 years old. I was going to be 25 years old. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know, in civilian life, I didn't have a vocation. So I thought, well, flying about all I know anything about. I'll just stay in. So I said, I would like to sign up for a regular commission. So he said, okay, why don't you put in for Command General Staff School at Leavenworth. So I did. I put in Command General Staff School. Got accepted. And this was in May of 45. And you can imagine what we were studying at the Command General Staff School in May of 45. The logistics for the landing on the plane. And that was going to be a foretaste. They were telling us that we've already written off $1 million men. It would cost us $1 million men to do this. So we don't do it on the way out. And about halfway through the course, I got a letter from the squadron adjutant saying that a list of people with points for discharge had come through the office, and my name was on it, but he took it off because I had said I wanted to stay in. He said, I want you to confirm that to me. So I sat down and I wrote him a letter, and I said, the next list that comes out, be sure Haley Ector is number 1 on that list. I'm not going to get involved in this man if I can help it. It was a no-win situation. Nobody. So I went on and graduated from command school. I graduated on about August 3rd. Went home, went back to Orlando. And when I got there, several of us had rented a house in Orlando. And when I got there, they said, well, the list came out today, and for discharge, said, you own it. And then the next morning, we were driving down to Kissimmee, and we heard about the atomic bomb. Well, at that point, everything came to a screaming halt. No more discharge. They put a stop to that, and of course, when things kind of settled out, we found out that the Russians were going to settle in and the Japs were going to quit. They went back to the discharge, and I finally got my discharge on the 25th of August.
Your birthday.
On my birthday. And, but I had too much vacation, so my actual discharge was October the 27th, 45. And then I got promoted to captain after I got out. But the war, I'm very much in favor of what Mr. Truman did. I think that he did exactly the right thing. I have no reason to question that at all. Because everything that we studied, I don't care what anybody says, I know I heard it with my own 2 ears. I was sitting right there when they taught it to us, that it was going to cost us a lot of men. That's just on our side, I don't know about the millions. And then they talk about the atomic bomb killing so many people. We'd already killed more than that with the firebombs in Tokyo.
B-29
The B-29s in the Tokyo with those firebombs, and I imagine over 100,000 Japanese have been killed, civilians, with that. And that was, I always say if you get killed with a bow and arrow or an atomic bomb, you're dead. You're away. And it's just a matter of how it happens. And the only trouble is that nobody was fighting with bow and arrows at that time. So we had to use the atomic bomb.
Looking at yourself from the time you went in January of 42 to when you came out in August of 45, you went from age 21 to 25. You changed a lot?
Oh, yes.
Lost a lot of weight.
Yeah. Well, when I was at Tech playing football, I weighed about 170 to 75. Came out of the service, I weighed 135. And, I wanted to go back and finish school, so I went back to Tech, and the registrar was not very fond of football players. And all the football players that came back, he was insisting they start over as freshmen.
Oh, that's neat.
And I just told him I wasn't going to do it. And I went down and talked to Coach Bill Alexander, who was the coach. And he said, well, I'll see what I can do, but I don't think I can do anything. I wasn't going to play any more football anyway. At 135 pounds, I couldn't play. And he wasn't able to help me any, so I took my transcript and went to Auburn. And they let me finish in a year and a half at Auburn.
An engineering program? Or?
It was, industrial management, industrial engineering. And I felt like I got the best of the two schools. I got the engineering part from Tech, and then I went to Auburn and got the business part from Auburn, which was much better. Business.
Well, back to Dr. Jonathan's question, I can't think of anything that would force you to mature more than being in a war. You went in as a college boy, and you came out a man who'd seen death and destruction. Didn't it do great? I mean, things that will never get out of your mind, I'm
Still,
sure.
Even 50-odd years later, you remember it. You can see it a lot of times. But it was quite an experience. I don't recommend it for everybody, but
They had to grow up in a hurry.
yeah. Well, we all did. We were all just playboy.
They had rather protected.
But you know,
life.
we all knew, really, in those years, that we were most likely going to have to fight a war. It was very hard to see how we could stay out of the war. Mr. Roosevelt maneuvered us into it, and he was right. I've never been a Roosevelt fan, but he was so right on the way he ran this war. And I think Harry Truman came along and did very similar. He did a good job too. But Mr. Roosevelt just could see, he was farsighted enough to see that we couldn't be isolated. And that's the problem I've got with some of our politicians right now. They want to be isolated. We can't be, not in this world, and especially today. Gosh, it was hard enough back in 1940.
When people couldn't fly across the ocean.
That's right. And when we didn't have all the electronic communications that we have now. You can send an email anywhere in the world and things like that.
Haley, without his teeth, a horse knocked his tooth out on Fiji, some of his teeth. Two of them, front teeth.
Came up too close to a horse, did you?
Well, I was riding him. He
Through his
decided
head.
he wanted to go out in the pasture with the other horses, and I yanked him back over, and he stood up on his hind legs, and I wasn't expecting, and I grabbed him around the neck, and he butted me in my mouth.
Got that
teeth out.
fixed. You sat on an orange crate or something
Yeah.
on the.
Went up to the dentist, and he had an orange crate there, and I sat on that while he pulled one of them, pulled both of them. One of them had been knocked out while he pulled it with his teeth, fingers.
With
The other
his
one-
fingers.
Yeah, it just knocked straight back. And the other one was broken off at the gum line. And I had to sit there on that orange crate while he pulled that broken tooth out, cut it out.
This poem is sweet. That's your mother's handwriting, isn't it? She says, I can't express my feelings to you, but these verses mean us too. About our boy that grips in the skies above, and he's called to fight for freedom. He's in it with a will.
She said that to you during the war? Did you write back and forth pretty often?
Yes, Spanish. Well, I guess I was not the best
Well,
correspondent in the
aren't
world,
there
but I did.
Don't you have some of your letters they had saved? And that little V-mail letter, you really had to have good eyesight to read those little tiny things. By the time it's been condensed so much, you can hardly read them. You managed to hang on to a good many things. Yeah.
Did you use a GI Bill to?
Yes, I did. I used the GI Bill to go back to Albany for a year and a half.
Your brother made it through the war?
My brother made it through the war. He came back to the States from the South Pacific. He joined the Air. He got transferred into the Air Corps, and came back and went through flight training.
So following your footsteps for a change.
And he finished flight training, but he was a captain when he went through flying school. And he finished flight training and was put into the B-26. The B-26, the original B-26 was like the P-39. It wasn't really supposed to, and it killed a lot of people.
Oh, the Widowmaker.
Yeah, the Widowmaker. It was, and that's what he went into when he graduated from flying school. And they, this A-26 that I mentioned earlier down in Orlando, they changed its designation to a bomber and called it a B-26, and then he went into that. That was a good airplane, and he was had flown to Savannah with the group, and they were going to leave the next morning to head for Europe, and the war in Europe ended. So I don't remember where he was stationed at the time, but he went back, and then they started preparing them to get ready to go to the Pacific. But he fortunately didn't have to do that either at the end. Seen enough.
One of these negatives, I heard, one is your plane burning, isn't it? Well, what's the other one?
I don't know. I looked at that the other night.
It looks like it was
That's
made.
Oh, that's on Guadalcanal. The Japs had an ice plant.
Had a what?
Ice plant where they make ice, and we took it. I mean, I didn't know them to do it. Our boys took it and they set it up, and they had Tojo's ice plant. I think that's what that is.
Is that you?
No, that's Dick Drayton, this friend that got
It
killed.
looks like you needing a shave, but it's not. And the
That's who I
plane,
named- that's who I named my son
Murdoch's
for.
Merle,
Mural.
Muriel,
Uh-huh.
as in the cigars.
He got shot down in Italy, flying P-38. But he and I roomed together all the way through flying school. And, he went to P-38s and I went to P-39s, and he got shot down.
You didn't make it back.
Well, I named my oldest son for him, though. It was,
Anything?
made a lot of good friends. Anything that you can think of that you'd like to ask me?
Well, is there anything that you want to be sure that I know?
Well, I think that pretty much have covered it. We were talking about the Normandy invasion. Part of the work that we did in Orlando after I came back from Mississippi, that I said we're trying out equipment, and one of the things that they wanted done, they were thinking about trying to lay a smoke screen for the Normandy invasion, and they sent to our squadron there in Orlando 4 British-made dive bombers. I can't remember who made them. I tried to look that up last night, and I couldn't find it. But anyway, they sent 4 of them, and they low-wing, 2 cockpits, front and back cockpit. And they put a big oil tank in the back cockpit, and that would make the smoke. And so they sent those 4 planes down to us in Orlando to see if we could lay an effective smoke screen with those planes. And it was the sorriest airplane you ever saw. I thought the P-39 was, but boy, this one, I told people it flew like a log. They assigned 4 hours to it, this project. And I said, you could fly a log and it'd be about the same thing. But it was horrible. We'd go up, we'd go to the range and try to lay these smoke screens, and when the only way you could come close, and it wasn't very good, to laying a decent smoke screen, was to be about treetop height and flying about 10 knots above stalling speed. And then when you turned on the smoke, the oil, well, the smoke boiled back up into the cockpit.
I wondered about that.
And you had to go on instruments immediately. You couldn't see anything outside. And so you fly instruments, you are 10 feet above the trees, 10 miles per hour above stalling speed, and it wasn't a very good feeling. And that's sorry of airplane. But we worked on that for, I guess, 2 months trying to make that work. And we never were able to get them effectively. And the plane, if you didn't land on both wheels, it was a conventional landing gear. And if you didn't land on both wheels, when you landed, the one that hit the ground first, the dead blame shock absorber would stick. And you'd land with your wheels like this, you know, and it'd throw you out across. And we lost 2 of those planes to that.
2 of them.
2 of the 4. And that just left this other guy and myself working on it. And we never did that. We never were satisfied. But if they'd sent us over there, we'd have been shot out. Fine. We wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes.
It's a number of times you can look and say, that was lucky.
Yeah. A lot of them. When I was lucky, I always said I had a good co-pilot. The Lord is my co-pilot. You remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
God's
my co-pilot.
We all agreed to that. Those fellowship did. But there were some great people, and we have a good many reunions. We've got one coming up next month, which we're not going to be able to go to. And we enjoy talking about old times. But you know, it's gotten to where at every one of these reunions we have, this Yamamoto argument.
It did at that
predominates.
Valdosta, at Moody Air
It
Force.
predominates, and it is.
That's too bad.
Too bad.
Because that's just one matter,
One thing.
but it sounds like it's really divisive.
It has been too bad.
When something was mentioned, the reactivation of the division at Moody Air Force Base, Valdosta, recently, and the Secretary of the Air Force was there, and the bands played and so forth. But that came up, and it was, again, you know, argued.
Yeah, that's too bad, because the experience on balance sounds like it was a
Mutual.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
anyway,
you know,
it was
everybody.
It was a fantastic intercept. It was a perfect intercept. Now in an airplane like the type we were flying, the prop planes, and no radar, nothing to help them navigate. It was dead reckoning. They figured this out and came within, I don't remember exactly, I think it was a 2 minute. I think as soon as they got there, they saw the planes taking off. You can't do it much better than that.
That's remarkable.
And you know, that's something else. I maybe I'll talk about this. Pappy Boyd.
Oh, I've heard a lot about Pappy Blankton.
Turn it on. I'm going to call him what he is.
No, you go ahead. I just soon have that down.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah, I have heard that.
And we had the misfortune of being there at the same time. Well, Pappy claimed that he was offered that mission first, but he decided to let the Army do it because they hadn't had much glamour.
Yeah, that
So
sounds
Pappy
like
didn't have a plane that would do it. His plane wouldn't make that flight. It didn't have the range. The P-38 was the only plane out there that had the range and the ability to do it. So Pappy wasn't even considered on that. But he had a squadron over on a little island called Coleman Gower. And if they had done all they claimed, the war in Japan would have been over a year before. There wasn't any way they could have done what they claimed to do. It was just a bunch of falsehoods.
Well, you cleaned that up.
But they felt that they needed some help over there on their little island. And we were over on New Georgia, base over New Georgia. So every morning at daylight, 4 of our ships, 4 of our P-39s, we rotated this, would fly over to Pappy's Island and fly cover while they took off to go on their first mission. See, we didn't have, the P-39 didn't have the range to go on a lot of these bombing missions. We were limited in our range. So we got all the close-in stuff. And so we'd go and we'd cover them for their takeoff. And then we would land on his strip. And they had a big tarp set up where we'd go over there and sit under that tarp and play cards and talk and carry on. And I don't know what I would do, but we tried to stay busy all day. We stayed there the whole day to be there in case there was a raid on them. And we called out. And then It's dark when their last flight was coming in. We would cover the field for them to get in on their last flight, and we'd go home. But when you get ready to take off in a prop plane, you have to test your magnetos. Check your mag. Are you familiar with that terminology, what I'm talking about? Okay, well, to check your mags, you run your engine up to high RPM, and you turn it to one set of mags, and you don't lose too much, and you turn the other. Anyway, you run your engine up to a high speed, and they could have gotten on the opposite side of the runway from us and checked their mags. But no, they always came down on our side of the runway where we were sitting on that tarp, turn their tails to us, and run their engines up and check their mags for takeoff. And we'd stand out there and we'd throw rocks at them. We hated Pappy Boynton and his crowd. We couldn't stand them. And they were a bunch of liars. They were good for nothing. He was a sight.
A lot of heavy drinkers in that crowd.
Yeah. They could get it. We couldn't get it. They would, for us, for each mission that a fighter pilot flew, they'd give us credit for 1.5 ounces of overcoat, dry whiskey. We call it overcoat.
Oh, that's what it sounds like.
But when we had built up enough for a fifth, they'd give us the full fifth, because we didn't fly just one mission a day. You know, Obama group would fly one mission, and when they'd come in and be debriefed, why, they'd give them a drink if they wanted. But they couldn't do that for us, because we had to fly. So we would build up that, and I couldn't drink the stuff. I never have been much for drinking. I like wine and beer, but whiskey makes me sick. And it was material. We used it to trade for different things.
Sure.
But we didn't get much in that respect. Every now and then we'd get a plane would come in that had been to Australia and bring some beer back. And that was what I liked. I liked the beer.
If you
And
get
that
a cool
Australia- Well, as a result, even today I prefer my beer room temperature. I don't put it in the refrigerator. Do you like yours that way?
I think it's from being in Europe a fair amount that you get used to drinking beer that isn't very cold.
Well, it ruins your taste to me. It takes the taste away. But
So
the best can of beer I ever had was after this last mission. I think I told you I escorted this PBY, and I started out with 4 men. I was the flight leader and had 4 men going with me. And for one reason or another, all 4 of them turned around and went back. Engine troubles or something not working properly, and left me by myself. Got there with this PBY. Thank goodness no zeros came out. But when I got back, the group that I was flying with had all gone back down to Guadalcanal, and a new group had come in to replace us. But they didn't wait for me. They left me up there. And I had 1 can of beer that I'd been saving. I don't know where I got it. I think it was a Pabst Blue Ribbon, if I remember correctly. But I'd been saving that can of beer for a long time. And,
How'd you keep it hidden? Somebody.
I kept it down in my parachute bag. And, so they told me, okay, there's a C-47 going back to Guadalcanal at 3 o'clock this afternoon. If you're out there, you can ride with them. So I found out where that C-47 was, and I went out there, took my bags and went out there, sat down under the wing of that airplane and pulled that can of beer out and drank it.
I just see you.
That's the best can of beer I had.
That's a wonderful, wonderful way to say goodbye.
And that was my last mission.